So I'll pick up where I left off in part 2 by explaining the four sons of Horus. So I've already explained in part 2 Set or Amseti and his son Dumutef, also known as Anubis or Wepwawet. They are two of the four sons of Horus, as they're called, and the other two are the men with the head of the bird and the baboon. So I'll do the one with the head of the bird first because I've actually already explained who he is in part 1. And in the form of the canopic jar, he is known as Kebusunef. And he is Horus himself. And Horus is Djur, the son of Isis or Neithhotep, and Namur, who is Osiris. So again, the four sons of Horus, as they're called, are actually not the four sons of Horus at all, because two of them are Set and his son, and the one all the way to the far right is Horus himself, who is Djur, and he is Set's nephew. So the only one of the four left to explain is the one with the head of the baboon. And I saved him for last because he's the only one of the four that I can't definitively say who he was in the beginning. But I will tell you what I do know about him. He is known as Happy in his canopic jar form, and he has the head of a baboon, but he is also shown sometimes with the head of an ibis. He is also known by a more familiar name, Thoth. And in the most ancient text, he is known as Dehuti. And he is said to be born of the lips of Ra, or born of the words of Ra. And he has no mother. So he is born of Ra, he has no mother, and he assists Neithhotep, who is Isis, with the creation of Horus, after the death of Osiris. And he is one of the four spirits, and he stands next to Horus, but he is not born of Horus. Therefore, as I've said, these four spirits were not the sons of Horus at all, and Happy or Thoth was born before Horus was even conceived. Therefore, he cannot be born of Horus, because he already existed. So when we look at the fact that Thoth is born of Ra, and when we look at Tuthmos III, and we look at his name means born of Thoth. And the Egyptian rulers themselves called themselves the sons and daughters of Ra, just like Thoth. And they even gave themselves names like Tuthmos, which means born of Thoth. So I may not know who the original Thoth is, and that is still a mystery to me, but it's safe to say that the bloodline of Thoth is represented in the bloodline of Tuthmos III and his son Amenhotep and his son Akhenaten and his son Tutankhamun. So there are a few things that are widely known about Thoth. He is said to be the great scribe of Ra and the recorder of all knowledge that has been handed down to us throughout the ages. He is said to be the author of the Emerald Tablets, and he is said to be an Atlantean. And if Thoth was indeed an Atlantean, this simply means that he was from the Americas, because what they called Atlantis in ancient times was simply the landmass that existed beyond the Atlantic Ocean. This land was discovered 500 years ago, and it is the Americas. And according to the Egyptian records, he had a daughter named Seshet, who was also a scribe, just like her father. So far I've explained Osiris, Isis, Horus, Set, and his son Dumutef, as well as Thoth, also known as Happy. So I have something else to share with you about Thoth, but before I do, I want to explain the two ladies. So remember that I've shown you guys the statue of Osiris from the tomb O, and it shows two women, not one, straddling the loins of Osiris. And you'll notice that Osiris is always shown with the two ladies behind him. So I've already explained that Wadjet is Isis or Neithhotep, and she is the mother of Horus and the wife of Osiris. and her symbol is the cobra or the Wadjet symbol. So when it comes to the two ladies, their symbol was the vulture and the snake. This symbol was used by all Egyptian kings, and this is a necklace of Tutankhamun showing the vulture and the snake. And this symbol of the two ladies was called Nebti, and all Egyptian kings had a Nebti name. This Nebti name was their ruling name, and Nebti simply means the two ladies. So the Egyptian rulers who had a Nebti name, they would be called he or she of the two ladies. And this is an excerpt from the tomb of Akhenaten, and he writes how the two ladies are the establishers of laws, and they pacify the two lands. So I've already established that one of the two ladies is Wadjet, also known as Neithotep or Isis. So the other one is known as Nekhbet. She is also known by her more familiar name, Sekhmet, and she is also known as Mat. And here is Nekhbet shown in two forms, as the vulture and the lion. And she is known as the daughter of Ra, or the Eye of Ra. And this is a stela showing Tutankhamun standing in front of Sekhmet, and on both sides of her are the symbols for the two ladies. And this is Tutankhamun's Nebti crown, bearing the two symbols, the vulture and the cobra, for the two ladies. And this is Tutankhamun standing in front of Sekhmet and her husband, Ptah. So according to the ancient Egyptian text, Ptah is the husband of Sekhmet. And the interesting thing about Ptah being Sekhmet's husband is the fact that Ptah and Osiris are the same people. All of the characteristics of Ptah were later morphed into the character that we know today as Osiris. And here we see Ptah and Sekhmet together to the left, and to the top right, Tutankhamun, as I've shown you already, standing in front of Sekhmet and Ptah. And at the bottom, there's Ramses. And Ramses, just like Tutankhamun, is standing in the middle of Ptah and Sekhmet. So Ptah and Osiris are the same people. And remember I showed you the statue of Osiris with the two women straddling the loins of Osiris, as well as the same two women who are always standing behind Osiris. These two ladies collectively are called Nebti, and individually they represent Isis, who is also Neithotep or Wadjet, and the other is Nekhbet, also known as Sekhmet or Mat, and they are both the wives of Osiris. So Ptah and Osiris or Namur are the same people. And if you look at the Namur palette at the top, you'll see the young Namur to the left with a skull cap, and to the right, the adult Namur wearing the same crown as Osiris. And at the bottom left, we see Ptah with his skull cap, and to the right, Osiris. So Isis is supposed to be the wife of Osiris, and Sekhmet is supposed to be the wife of Ptah. But with Ptah and Osiris being the same people, it makes sense that we see Osiris with the two ladies because both of them are his wives. This is why we always see the two ladies standing beside Osiris. This is why all of the Egyptian kings who claim to be from the bloodline of Osiris also claim to be of the two ladies as well. And this is why we see two women straddling the loins of Osiris and not one. So when it comes to the myth of Osiris, we're told that Thoth helps Isis after her husband Osiris dies. Here we have Thoth, and in the middle we have Ptah, and we see him becoming the Osiris with the help of Thoth. And here we have Thoth and Osiris. Now the interesting thing about Thoth and Sekhmet is that both of them are said to be born of Ra and are considered the children of Ra, but neither of them have any mother, only Ra as their father. And here we have Nekhbet, also known as Sekhmet, with Ra, who is shown with the head of a ram. So this will conclude part 3, and I'll continue explaining the rest in part 4.